If you're going to Disney World with young kids, you might be trying to figure out what roller coasters are appropriate for them at this stage, depending on how old they are and how tall they are. And if they're tall enough, you may have multiple options and you might not know which ones to start with. So I'm hoping that this list will help you out. My first suggestion would be to see how your kid is reacting to other rides. When we first went, the very first ride we went on was Pirates of the Caribbean. And my son did not like that first drop that's in the dark. So every ride after that was, how many drops are there? So if they like a ride or they don't like a ride, see if you can figure out why and try to use that to gauge whether or not the roller coasters are going to be appropriate. Many of the roller coasters have ride videos on YouTube. Some of them are actually in very high resolution and are front of the ride vehicle, so you can really get a sense for what it looks like. I would say that you probably have to be careful with using that as a guide for how fast the roller coaster goes. I feel like watching those, sometimes they seem like they go faster than the video is kind of showing, but they are a good way to kind of gauge what is going to be on that roller coaster. Does it do more speed? Is it up and down, like bumping? Is it more side to side turning? Is it deep, like curved turns? It can help you kind of gauge what type of roller coaster you're dealing with. Another thing you can do when you get to the park is go to the ride. Check it out, stand outside. Many of them are open enough that you can see at least parts of the roller coaster in some area, and you can kind of watch it, see how it goes. See how your kid looks when they're kind of watching it. Are they excited by it? Do they look a little scared about it? Do they not care and they don't even want to do roller coasters? So you can kind of gauge by them and go and look at it yourself and see it in person and see how they're going to react. Listen to your kids. See how they're reacting. If they don't want to go, I would say don't make them go. Even if this is going to be their only trip or their only trip for a long time, I don't think it's worth having them go on a ride that they're going to hate, or worse, they hate it and they remember that you made them do it. You might as well just move on, find something else that they will like, and just focus on that and have fun with whatever the other thing is. We thought that my son was absolutely going to love roller coasters. He ran all over the place. He jumped all over the place. He was always excited. We thought he was going to love it. And he didn't on our first trip. It just wasn't the way things were going to go. Okay, so here's my list of the order to do the roller coasters at Disney World. Now, not every roller coaster is on the list because I haven't done all of them. But I think the ones that I've included should help give you a good gauge for where to start and where to fit the other ones in along the way. The starting point I would recommend is Barnstormer in the Magic Kingdom. It's kind of the best intro. It's not very long. It's kind of a short roller coaster and not very intense. It has the lowest height requirement of any of the other roller coasters at 35 inches. And on our very first trip with my son, he was sure he was going to like roller coasters. And he tried the Barnstormer, and he didn't like it. We immediately, I think after the first dip, he was telling me he didn't like it and he wanted to get off. I said, don't worry, it's a very short roller coaster. We'll be off very soon, and we don't have to do any more. And he got off, and we went on, and we just focused on other rides. Later, when we went back to Disney another time, he tried it again, and he loved it. And so we went on and tried other roller coasters later. The next two are a tough call, I think. You have two options: Seven Dwarfs Mine Train in Magic Kingdom or Slinky Dog Dash in Hollywood Studios. Both are 38-inch height requirements. I think, personally, I would recommend Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. It has a nice break in the middle. If you watch a video on YouTube, it has a nice break in the middle where the cart kind of goes slow. And it has two roller coaster faster sections on either side. So you get a little break in the middle. it kind of reminds me visually of a kind of easier Thunder Mountain. The carts sway as they go around, so even though you're going around turns, you're kind of getting pressed into the seat the whole time. So it's all like a one direction type of force as you're moving through it. And it just seems a little bit easier. I don't think it didn't appear quite as fast. And from my memory, that's what it seemed too. I don't think it was a very fast roller coaster compared to Slinky Dog. So that's where I would start. It is Seven Dwarfs themed. So if your kids are into the Seven Dwarfs or they don't have any clue who the Seven Dwarfs are, maybe that will play into it a little bit. Slinky Dog Dash would be next on my list. It seems faster, and it definitely seems like it's built higher. So there's an element of height involved as you're going. I didn't like it as much in sections because there's some spots that are supposed to sort of mimic the like slinky aspect where the roller coaster kind of like does some quick like down and up and down and up and down. And I personally did not like the way that felt on my body, but that's probably more about being in my 40s and less about the actual thrill and intensity of the roller coaster. My son on the second trip did really enjoy Slinky Dog. He has not done Seven Dwarfs, but I'm hoping that on our next trip we might get a chance to do Seven Dwarfs, and maybe he can tell me whether or not he likes one better than the other. Personally, I would do Seven Dwarfs before Slinky Dog, but I think depending on what your kid likes and what you feel like that they're up for, you could swap those around easily. Slinky Dog is Toy Story themed. Next up, if your kids are okay with up through those three, I would say Big Thunder Mountain would be your next step. It's more intense, goes a little bit faster. The height requirement is 44 inches, but that would be the next step, I believe, in the roller coasters after the other three. If they can handle Barnstormer, Seven Dwarfs, Slinky Dog, then Thunder Mountain is your next step. It's got that nice Western theme. It's a classic. Depending on when you're going. We're going to be going again, and it's actually going to be under refurbishment, so you may not have it as a choice. So that actually might be a little bit harder because the next one is Space Mountain at 44 inches height requirement. And that one, I think, steps it up significantly. At least it has the illusion of stepping it up significantly. It is probably very similar to Thunder Mountain, but it's single file seating, so you're not next to your child, and it's in the dark. When I went to Disney World with my family for my cousin's first trip to Disney when she was little, she did not want to go on Space Mountain. Everybody else was going. That was back in the was at the Fast Pass times when you had the paper ticket, and we all had a paper ticket to go and ride it at a certain time, and she did not want to go. But she was torn because her friends all had gone and they loved it. So we got in line, we were getting ready to go on, and she came along and she did it. And it is definitely more intense, but it is probably the next level up. That one's probably going to be the hardest. My feeling is if your kids can do up through Space Mountain, then really after that, they kind of can try anything if they're tall enough. If you're going with your kids and they have no problem with Space Mountain's exciting and fun, then if they're tall enough to do the others, they probably could do them. I don't think there's anything extreme out of the others that would be too much. Next, I would put Expedition Everest in Animal Kingdom. That also has a 44-inch height requirement. There are some dark sections and one fairly large drop, and there are sections in the dark inside the mountain as you're going on the ride. So that one is a little bit more intense. It ramps everything up a little bit. It's possible if your kid is not going to like the all in the dark of Space Mountain, you potentially could move on to Expedition Everest. It does have the benefit of you sitting next to your child if you're both going on it. There are some dark elements. There is a part where you go backwards, and then there is the steep drop. But you can find ride videos. You could check it out and see how it looks and see if you think it would be okay. I used to really like it. Lately, it's been giving me headaches when I've gone on it, so I don't do it as much as I used to. But probably the next time I go, I'll probably do it at least one time. A tip for that one, if your kid isn't going to do it and you have somebody else who can be with them, single rider on that typically goes pretty quick. So you can possibly, if somebody else is watching the kid for a moment, you can maybe get in the line while they're getting a drink or sitting down for a moment, go ride it, come back, and then switch off if you want to be able to ride it and they can't go. Last on my list is the Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith at Hollywood Studios. That one is a 48-inch height requirement, and it's mostly in the dark, though not quite as much as Space Mountain is. But it does go upside down, and it does have a launch at the beginning that's very fast. So that's one, I'd put that last. It is a fun one. It's also going to be going away and getting rethemed. So if you get a chance to do it while you're there, you might want to, but I would put that last. If your kids are handling everything up till then, you could probably do that one next. In general, rider swap is a good option if you want to go on any of these roller coasters, but your child doesn't or isn't tall enough. You can talk to somebody at the ride and figure out how to do a swap off. We've done this with my son because he wants to go and we all want to go, but we had our youngest who could not go. So we would do a rider swap where my wife and my son would go on the roller coaster, then they'd come back, and then my wife and I would swap off, and I'd go back on it with my son again, and he'd get to ride it twice. So that was a lot of fun. We were able to do that for many roller coasters and a lot of other rides too, that had a height requirement so that my youngest couldn't go. The two roller coasters I didn't include were Guardians of the Galaxy and Tron. I've never been on those. I can't judge those. I'm hoping to be able to go on Guardians of the Galaxy the next time I go to Disney. And potentially Tron too, we'll see. Guardians has a height requirement of 42 inches, which Guardians is in Epcot, if I didn't mention that. Tron is over at the Magic Kingdom with 48-inch height requirement, which is the same as Rock and Roller Coaster. But once you hit Rock and Roller Coaster height, it kind of doesn't really make much of a difference. You're far enough along in the height and the age and the experience of doing other roller coasters that you kind of know whether or not you're going to like roller coasters in general, and then it's just whether or not you like the ride or not. So I think as you get later in the list, it makes less difference. The biggest one that's the first hurdle to overcome is Barnstormer. If they like Barnstormer, then in general, they like roller coasters. The idea then is, are they ready for the next step up in intensity? And then you can use the list to figure out, okay, they liked Barnstormer, they liked Seven Dwarfs, they like Slinky Dog, will they like Thunder Mountain? So that first trip that I went on, my son did not like Barnstormer, and we stopped all roller coasters after that. And I even tried to have him not go on things like Star Tours and Hollywood Studios because I kind of figured if he didn't like the motion of a roller coaster, he probably wasn't going to like Star Tours, which he didn't, though he then said that he actually really did, and he was just joking. But then our next trip when we went down, he really liked Barnstormer, and he wanted to go straight to Thunder Mountain, and he just wasn't tall enough for Space Mountain, or I think he would have done that too. So it can be all timing. If they're tall enough, and they like them, ease them into it and see as it goes and just keep following it up and see if they seem like they're going to meet that next step for the next level of intensity. You want them to have fun. You want to be able to have fun with them. It's no fun if they hate it. It's no fun if you make them do it and they hate it. And it really is no fun if they hate it and then they blame you for making them do it. So I would just try to ease into it. Try to follow along and watch how they're reacting and just make sure everybody's having fun. If you are planning your trip down, you're getting ready to go on roller coasters, you're trying to figure out whether or not your kids are going to go on them and which order to do them in, I hope you have a fantastic time. I hope they love roller coasters and you all get to enjoy it and have a really exciting time. Thanks for stopping by. I'm glad you're here. I hope you had fun. I actually kind of had fun shooting this one. So I guess I'll see you next time.